You are listening to the Common Ground podcast, where social justice topics are discussed so that mutual solutions can be considered. This program was created by me, Ziggy Kozicki. You can join these conversations by following Common Ground podcast on Facebook. This program was created through the facilities of the MCTV network, a service of the City of Midland. Charter, DirecTV, MCTV, and the City of Midland are not responsible for the content of this program. The views presented do not necessarily represent those of Charter, DirecTV, the City, or MCTV. If you would like to learn about creating community podcasts like this one, contact MCTV at 989-837-3474. Thank you. Well, welcome to U.S. Common Ground, or Us Common Ground, as some people would like to think about it, because it is about us. And this is a program that looks at social justice issues and a variety of other concerns that we face, and try to find some common space where we can work together instead of being divided, actually work in some kind of way that leads to the benefits that we can all share. My guest this day, coming to me and you from Hazel Park, is Genevieve Fox. And Genevieve is an environmental journalist, amongst other things. And she's always looking for stories. So right up front, I should let you know that if you want to talk to her about a story, you can contact her at foxgenevieve@gmail.com. And that's fox.genev@gmail.com. And I'm sure she'll be happy to look at whatever you think she might be able to elevate in that great world out there. So welcome, Genevieve.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I met Genevieve down a ways. She actually emceed one of our Great Lakes environmental festivals and has been writing stories in a variety of different venues out there in the state of Michigan. And she's joining us now to talk about a couple of things: climate change and environmental justice and its access to education, but mostly about environmental media because she's in it. And she is a Gen Z, which I have always said is the next greatest generation because they're going to have some of the biggest problems and issues to deal with. And I'm sure that they're going to do it because they have no choice.
Right.
Yeah. So with that, Genevieve, what would you like to introduce or start with from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, actually, something just kind of going back. I remember the first time we talked was actually about the Great Lakes Environmental Festival, and I
Yes.
was on the reporting side,
Yeah.
kind of asking you what, your experience, why you created the Great Lakes Environmental Festival. So that was an interesting. Met you as a reporter first.
Yes.
But I would say the first thing that we can kind of dive into, I know that we've talked about kind of there's been a huge distrust in the media. I think that's something that we're seeing a lot of, especially with the rise of social media. Well, not the rise; it's already there,
Yeah.
but
The presence of
yeah, the
this,
presence of
influence.
yeah, and I think that is a huge deal right now. People are less trusting of the media, so now we're seeing people aren't reading as much news either. So that puts a damper on a lot of things. Getting people to know what's going on, getting people to care about what's going on. And also, of course, we've seen this huge rise in AI, which I think can be helpful, but I think we are seeing some negative things from it too. So I know that's something we've kind of talked about a little bit with distrust in media.
Yeah, I think media's been manipulated even way back in the time of our founding fathers. Jefferson, for instance, used media to pass on stories about Adams and others that he didn't like uh, in an effort to try to influence the public. So it's been with us a long time. But I wanted to point out that if people wanted to make comment about this program, they can do so by going to our Facebook site, which is U.S. Common Ground, and we'll be happy to continue a chat there. But as Genevieve has pointed out, uh, she and others who are in media, and I know a lot of people now rely on media to try to do fact checking, particularly since some of our government agencies are actually being stripped down and to some degree being eliminated from providing us with data and information that we need to make good decisions. And as is always the case when people are trying to lie about facts or distort things, the journalists have come through and broken through that process and provided us with important information. And our founding fathers really made it that way. They wanted somebody to be looking over their shoulder and making sure that trust could be established or at least maintained. And I think when we look at environmental issues, that's really even more important now than before because of climate change and the kinds of things that are going on. Climate change is, in fact, a major issue that we can't ignore.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I've also seen, I'm mostly in local news or smaller local media news. And now with local newspapers kind of shutting down, there's this need for local news and to especially cover things that, we've also seen that the coverage for, environmental issues, climate change kind of has gone down or is not um, as big of a topic that people are sharing. And I think that there is this, um, there's this pocket or there is this niche of being able to put local media on, um, kind of have a voice for, environmental issues or change to be so that people can see what's going on in their communities, have a personal connection, or see what people are doing in their communities, their local, their neighbors or the businesses that they go to, how they are part of this chain reaction of solutions to some of these environmental issues that we're seeing. I know for Issue Media Group, which is where I manage a couple of newsrooms, that's something that we're seeing, and it's exciting. It's really interesting, and I'm excited to see kind of where that goes.
Yeah, I've been watching the larger movements. People want to buy Warner Brothers and they want to buy CNN, and then therefore control it. People bought CBS, and they're controlling the news there. There's been some criticism of, for instance, 60 Minutes, which has always been kind of considered a standard for providing objective information, now doing a lot of editing and backtracking and responding to political pressures instead of just reporting the facts. Uh, and it seems as if this is almost Orwellian in ways because if the information that we're sharing is only going to be the information that people who have influence and power want to share, then the truth, whatever it might be, is going to be lost, and or it's going to end up seeming like a conspiracy. People are going to say, I don't think that water over there is really good to drink. I've heard there's a chemical in it. I don't know what it is. We don't have an environmental agency that tests anymore. Public health department doesn't have money to do the testing. The local newspaper has been shut down, so can't really get a story there. But I know somebody told me that they don't like the smell of it, and it's making their animals sick. And I'm wondering if there's something there we should be concerned about. And again, that's where the environmental journalists would come in and say, yeah, there is, and here's what it is. It's PFAS or something else. And volatile organic compounds that have crept into the groundwater, and you're drinking it, and your children are drinking it, and your pets are drinking it. And yeah, somebody should do something about it. Yeah, these are the kinds of things that I think that we really have to be concerned about. Um, yeah, I always wondered about journalism uh, as being kind of a grassroots thing before it became a big business, and that people, Benjamin Franklin printed a newspaper and sold each copy for a penny or something like that. Had his own printing press, and other people did the same thing. Um, Maybe we're going to go back to more of a co-op kind of news process where communities support their local news through donations or through some gatherings, or maybe we'll get some philanthropists, people who, the Bill Gateses of the world who have more money than they're ever going to spend, that are going to say, you know what, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set aside $1 billion for local journalists to develop all across the United States and to create stories that people can count on because they're not being influenced by uh, those influencers that can buy a newspaper and tell the editor, this is what I want your stories to look like.
Absolutely. I mean, we're definitely seeing a shift in having, community members help these local newspapers or, find ways to donate. Or I know for IMG specifically, or the Keel, which is a newspaper that I edit for with the Community Foundation, they support what we do. They appreciate what we do. And I know that's kind of a philanthropic kind of channel that supports us. And I know that through other publications that we do have other community leaders kind of coming in and saying, hey, like, we appreciate what you do and what kind of news that you guys report on. How can we help? How can we support you guys? So I see that there is this shift, and I don't think it's with just us. I think other local newspapers in the area too are shifting towards that. And I know too that more newspapers, more independent newspapers always ask readers what they're looking for. And I think that's kind of something different. The traditional, or I guess what a lot of newspapers kind of do is they just see a story and then just kind of do it, which I think that can work. But I think it's also important to consider, what are people seeing? What do they want to know? Engage your audience. I think that is huge right now. People are less and less trusting. So when you are able to go into your community, seeing what they want to know and digging deeper into what they're seeing, I think that kind of brings people back, brings that connection back to like news. And yeah, I don't know. I think there's an interesting shift going on in news right now, the way that news is working.
Yeah, and I think that conspiracy theories tend to develop when we do have this gap between the facts and what's really going on, and then those things become blown up and people run with them, and a lot of them are just absolutely crazy ideas
Yeah.
that people then start believing. And I hear people come up to me and say, and I'm going, oh my God, that's not even possible. I mean, why would you even think that could be possible?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you
And I
know,
think too, with just seeing so much like, either negative news, this doom and gloom
yeah,
outlook. I know that's something we've kind of talked about before. It gets people, I don't want to say desperate, but they're just looking for something to cling on to, something to, believe in, or what they're seeing, and I think too, with just AI or certain social media things can get misconstrued, or as you said, the disconnection, or just that gap. there's a lot of room for things to kind of happen when they should not be happening.
Yeah. You mentioned AI, that as long as AI is a trusted source, it could be
Right.
helpful. But if,
Yeah.
you have people manipulating the facts that go into AI, they have these big supercomputers and they're putting all this stuff in. It's very easy to say, okay, accept this, or
Right.
when this happens, this is the appropriate response, or don't mention this, but make sure you push that. All of a sudden, what we really have is propaganda. It's not news, it's not facts, it's just propaganda. And if people start repeating it, then it becomes a reality. It's like, well, I heard, I went to
Right.
AI, and it's like, whoa, where did we get off the road to truth and onto the road of being exploited by somebody? I mean, there's a sucker born every minute, is an old saying. I think that it's quite possible for many people to get sucked into believing things that aren't so, especially when you have politicians saying, hey, don't believe your lying eyes. This is what's really going on. People in authority, when they start doing it, and if they have no journalists there to check them, we're left in a position of having to believe them and hope, which is not really what we want, because we want to hold people accountable,
Yeah.
and truth is how you do that. When somebody says, hey, this and that, we say, well, we have facts here that basically say that isn't so. So how do you explain that discrepancy? Please do so, because I'm anxious. You're triggering my anxiety here. I really want to know the truth. I know. It reminds me of, I just saw a little excerpt from the movie A Few Good Men, where Jack Nicholson says, you can't handle the truth. I think we can. I think
Yeah.
as a society, we can and should be able to handle the truth, and should be given it constantly, because then we can get to common ground. Then we can all sit down and say, okay, we know there's some problems here, and we need to sit down and work together to try to figure out a solution. And I think that journalism is so much a part of that. If we don't have good journalism, we're really at a disadvantage.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said we're kind of like the middlemen in information or spreading information. A lot of times, if you're doing especially environmental journalism or any sort of, talking about hard science topics, you're talking with people, generally scientists, or, and they often have a hard time just speaking in layman's terms because
Yeah,
they're just so
yeah,
in their research, and
yeah,
it's hard to get people, your everyday people, to understand really complex science topics, even though the messaging is important, right? That's what you want people
yeah,
to get out of that is
yeah.
what's going on and what we can do, but sometimes it doesn't always kind of come out that way. So journalists, come in and break it up, put it back
Exactly.
together,
Yeah, and I'll give you a good example. I just did research with public health agencies in the state of Michigan. A lot of questions, a lot of data, a lot of responses, and I'm going to publish this. It's going to go into a professional journal, and I'm going to speak at a conference to other people who are interested in it. But what the public really wants to know is, how can we make public health better and more effective? And the answer that the journalist is going to come up with is that you need to provide more funding, you need to hire more people, and you need to provide more opportunities for the public to get involved in these public health issues. That's it. That's the story that the journalist is going to write. Uh, my paper is 32 pages. I have to shorten it to 16. Nobody wants to read 32 pages.
right?
Nobody wants to know all that, except the
Yeah.
people that are wonks and want to know more details. They want to know, what are the three or four things that need to be really extracted, and
Yeah.
what happens if we don't do this is the other thing. What are the consequences? Are we going to have another COVID epidemic? Are we going to see more people die? Those are the kinds of things that people want to know. Are we going to be able to avoid that? That's what the journalist would do, is boil it down,
Yeah.
maybe 6 paragraphs, and put it out there, and people will read it and go, oh, we need to provide more funding for public health, and here's why.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we know this too, that short form media has been huge now. People's attention spans, or
Yeah.
just, people are busy, and you want to be able to get so much information out in just this short, condensed, like you said, little piece.
Yeah.
Because I know I've seen somewhere that it's like after 1,000 words, typically people don't read
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, trying to get something that is, a huge issue, something going on into, 800, 600 words, or even just a video that's a minute or two long. I mean, that can be challenging for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. I don't think that we want everybody to be a researcher who looks at all the details and combs over it, and then has critical comments about the research design, or wants to delve. As I've done research, it's always the case that the person who reviews it says, "Okay, that's great, but you need to do more research now. You need to find out why this is." It's like most readers don't want that. They basically want to say, what did you find? How is it going to affect me? And what do I need to do about it? And can we actually do something about it? Those are the kind of things that people are looking at. Now, that is not to discount the researchers, the people that do the work, that get the facts, that finally get to a point where they can share it with somebody and say, hey, this might be something that you'd be interested in letting the public know about. That's important. The handoff to the journalist is usually, okay, now you make sense out of it and turn it into 5 paragraphs or whatever, and make it something that people will read and go, huh, I didn't know that. I'm glad I read this.
Yeah, I mean, we're all pieces to the puzzle, right?
Yes.
The researcher has to go out and find the information or get the information. We come in, journalists, and talk with them, bring it to the public. Now the public has this information, and they can do something too. It gives them the hope of what they can do, or how they can spread that information, or we're all pieces of this puzzle trying to solve this issue. And so that's why I think too, solutions journalism has been, huge now. A very a way to approach kind of these topics. What is it? What are the limitations? What's the evidence of this, and what can we do about it? Because, like you said, that's kind of what people want to know. They want to know what they can do, or what's going on. What can they do? I think that's huge.
Yeah, I think that we have to find a way to fund that. We need to find a way to make that work so it doesn't disappear. And I'm not sure what we're going to have to do that. I know a lot of the newspapers are going to subscriptions now, and you purchase a subscription instead of buying a newspaper. You purchase subscription. It's kind of the same thing. If you had a newspaper, and I must admit, in a previous time, I actually delivered newspapers to the front porches and mailboxes of people. There was the Bay City Times, and I would carry 84 of those newspapers, deliver them to the houses of people, and they would read it, or at least try to read it anyways, look at it. And if they didn't get it, they would be calling me and saying, I didn't get my newspaper. I need to know what's going on.
Right.
Now we have subscription, which is much easier to some degree. But we need to figure out how to make that easier for people to access. I think Gen Z is going to have an easier time of it than most generations, because you grew up with the social media in some way. My generation, the boomers, I remember the first computer. Seriously.
Really?
I remember, went to Radio Shack, went in, looked at it, asked, thought about buying it, sat down with the guy, and I said to him after I'm done, I think I'll wait for the next version.
Wow.
It's like kind of limited. I don't think it's good. but I remember doing that, and before that it was a calculator. It was Texas Instruments calculator, which my math teacher says you cannot use for the test.
Wow.
You have to use your head for the test. You can use it but you can't during the test. No calculators.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
we're in a different place. But yeah, so we've come a long way. People are much more ready, I think, to digest good information, but they're also getting a lot of conspiracy crap, propaganda, um, or to some degree, it's like, this. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to look at it.
Mhm.
It's too much. It's too much. It's it's triggering my anxiety. Oh my God, I don't, which we can deal with by saying that's okay. There's a solution too, and this is the next story actually talks about what we can do together,
Right.
and that's that common ground thing. Oh, there's a problem. Okay, let's sit down now and figure out what we can do about it. Let's find common ground. It may not be easy. It may be expensive. It may take time. It may not be a complete solution, but let's work at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know that with um, solutions journalism too, we see that it does help, like it does work. It does make people responsive to what information that they're reading. And I think that's a big component too. Like you said, sometimes when people can see things or read things, they maybe don't want to, or it just feels so helpless,
Yeah,
the doom and gloom outlook. And I think that's the solutions journalism kind of gives power back to the people of being like, oh, okay, so here is something we can do. And like you said, it might be hard, might be expensive, but it's something we're trying to work towards, and that common goal, common ground, you know?
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, I think there's now like 2,800 billionaires running around who've made a lot of money in one
Right.
way or another. And I don't know if that money's ever going to end up coming back to taking care of some of these problems, like environmental problems or whatever. But there's more money to be made. There's more resources to use. We need to figure out how to do a better job of putting those to work for the population, for population health, for the common good. And that's not going to happen until we start really having those discussions amongst each other, which journalists I think can really spawn and get going.
Yeah. And then I know also we've talked about this. I think now it's just kind of, getting young people more involved too. Now it's always getting the next generation involved, getting the next generation.
Your
Um,
generation.
yeah, my generation, and even the next one.
Yeah.
I have a little nephew, and I think about him being in the, like, he's the future too.
Yeah.
And I've told you too about substitute teaching and just seeing kids, and now I'm a lot more of like, okay, now they're developing their brains and what they're thinking, and
Yeah.
what are they going to do, or
Yeah.
can we do to prepare the next leaders.
Well, let's have another program. Let's pick up where we left off here. If you need to write to Genevieve, if you got a story, you have an interest, it's fox.genev@gmail.com. I'm sure she'd be happy to uh, hear from you. If you want to make a comment about this program, you can go to U.S. Common Ground in Facebook, leave a comment there, and I'm sure that I'll be happy to respond to it. More importantly, share your ideas with other people you know. Get into a circle of friends that are willing to talk about things like environment or the kind of things that matter to you. Because if we don't have common ground, we're not going to get anywhere. And I don't think that's really in our best interest. I think we're better than that.
Yeah,
So
I
Genevieve,
think so.
thank you for joining me here. I'll be looking forward to having you join us in a future program. And in the meantime, Happy New Year. And I hope it's a productive year for everybody out there also. So Thanks for joining us here at U.S. Common Ground.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Common Ground podcast, where social justice topics are discussed so that mutual solutions can be considered. This program was created by me, Ziggy Kozicki. You can join these conversations by following Common Ground Podcast on Facebook. This program was created through the facilities of the MCTV Network, a service of the City of Midland. Charter, DirecTV, MCTV, and the City of Midland are not responsible for the content of this program. The views presented do not necessarily represent those of Charter, DirecTV, the City, or MCTV. If you would like to learn about creating community podcasts like this one, contact MCTV at 989-837-3474. Thank you.